What's up, guys? So today in the garage we're going to be adding a transmission cooler to my 2020 Toyota RAV4. The reasons to add one is if you happen to tow with it, which gets RAV4, you really shouldn't be towing a whole lot, but you never know. You live in hot conditions, you take it on the trails. Essentially the transmission is getting hotter and you're not getting a whole lot of airflow through there. Some of them come with a transmission cooler from the factory. Mine's a base model LE, so it does not. That being said, I'm adding it just for most things, just because I want to. I don't think it's recommended to add one if you live in places where it's like cold year round, just because it's going to take longer for your transmission to get up to temperature. I live in Texas, right? It gets cold here, and that's not that cold. It does get really hot. And so I'm going to do some measurements on the temperature of the transmission before and after as well, just to compare. Guys, this is not a vehicle specific kit. It's a universal kit I'm using. So there's going to be a variety of ones that you can pick from. But for the most part, the install is going to be overall the same. So with that, let's go ahead and unbox the cooler. So the two things that I purchased are going to be the cooler itself and then some extra hose. This is hose that I picked up on Amazon. It is 6AN, 10 feet of universal braided oil fuel line hose. Again, nothing special, right? Just looked it up on Amazon. It seemed like a cool thing to add on there. It wasn't that expensive. I do recommend picking some hose, some extra hose up, just because the included in here doesn't look like it's a whole lot. The cooler itself is made by Hayden. The rapid transmission cooler, again, there's going to be a variety of them, right? There's a ton of them available out there. It's just going to depend on what you want. The specific model is 676, and let's see what's inside. So that has a standard issue hose. Again, it doesn't seem like it's all that long, right? More than likely we're going to use more than this, so I went ahead and purchased it. Worst case scenario, you can always return it, but you have some instructions on how to install different methods, which is kind of interesting. I looked into it. They don't say that you cannot install it upside down. As you can see, they show it upside down here and sideways. But there's been plenty of videos online saying that you should never install it with the outlets facing down, just because you can get air trapped. How much of a difference that will make, I'm not 100% sure. Once we get under there, we'll take a look and see how difficult it is. They even show it installed kind of upside down in their instructions. Again, we'll see when we get under there, right? Now we have the cooler itself. So this one is 11 by 5.5, right? I don't need a massive cooler. It's the inlets and outlets. Like I said, more than likely I'll be installing it facing up like this, and then a variety of hardware to install it. These little guys, they look like little zip ties, go through the cooler itself. They go through your radiator, and that's how you attach it to there. All right, so next thing to do is going to be to get the front of the RAV up in the air, so we can get the bottom cover off and gain access to where we're going to install the cooler. All right, guys, so we're going to jack up the front of the RAV, using that point right there to lift with our jack, and then we're going to put our jack stands, one on each side, okay? And it's going to allow us to remove this plastic panel and have some room under there. Okay, so now that I have my car up in the air, I got my jack stands in, chock blocks on in the back so I don't roll away. I'm going to look for all these bolts, and I'm going to remove them. Here's another one. All of these that hold this front piece on, so I can actually take the plastic off, and that's what I'm going to do now. They're 10mm, or you can use a Phillips. All right, so now our plastic is down, because it takes a bunch of these screws, 2 of these bolts that go here and here, and as you can see now, we have this plastic that's in the way as well. It's going to be these bolts that are here holding it up. 1, 2, 3, and then there's going to be a few more that like this, and then one on the other side, I believe. And that's the plastic, that piece of plastic. Let me see if I can get a better shot of it. You can see this plastic here. So we're gonna go ahead and remove that as well. All right, so we have a total of 5 bolts removed, right? They're all 10 millimeters. You can see this plastic is loose now, and it's kind of caught from here. So the way you remove this plastic is you got to push it a little bit and then pull it down, okay? And it's hard to do with one hand, but you kind of get the idea right there. You see how it kind of comes off? So you kind of push, you're essentially pushing the lower valance forward a little bit and then pulling down on it. That's where you're gonna break it, but enough to get it out. So let me go ahead and do that because I need both my hands. As you can see, I've got my edges out. Make sure that you're very careful with these clips here. Those are out. So now it's a matter of just pulling down and pulling it out. Which again, I need both my hands. So as far as you pull it out that way, okay? Let me do that now. Okay, so it's out. You gotta make sure you're careful with these little sponge thingies. Don't rip them off. But you're pretty much, whenever you're pulling it out, you gotta kind of like pull down that way and then out the bottom. That's why you wanna have enough room underneath the car. With the plastic out, as you can see, I have access to my radiator area. This is where I'm gonna put my transmission cooler. And so I just gotta figure out how I'm gonna route my oil lines now. All right, guys, to show you how I set my clamps. So I take the end of my hose, right, and you want to get it, I butt it up to the painted part, right, and it goes over the barb. And then the way I did my hose clamps was facing out, so the bumper is this way, right, so them facing out like that. That way they should be easily accessible and they'll stay out of the way of my little mounts that go, these little guys. So the way you cut, if you're decided to do braided like I did, there's a YouTube video showing you how to do it. But essentially you put tape on it and then you cut it, right, and that way it doesn't fray up. Okay, and so where I want it to go, and it's kind of hard because my light's in the way, but it's kind of in that space there, and I'll show you as for reference. It's gonna go kind of right there, right? So it's gonna get airflow. It's sitting at the bottom. I'm gonna mount it to the radiator using the supplied hardware. I am really tempted to just run these lines down, but we'll see. I don't know. Okay, so we're gonna need a little bit more room in here, and I'm kind of rethinking of where to position the cooler. So I'm gonna remove this top plastic piece, which to do that, you remove these push-ins and 2 of these bolts. And let me do that, and then that sucker comes right out. All right, so this has been fun. In order to remove this plastic piece, I gotta remove this latch, the hood latch, out of the way. But to gain access to the bolts, or easier, you gotta push this duct back, which are 2 10s as well. So now that I've done all of that, this plastic piece just comes off. And we have access to the top part of where we could potentially install. I'm kind of debating if I want to install on the top and the bottom. I'm going to go through some scenarios right now. Again, it's going to vary depending on what radiator or what cooler you get. I know there are some that have the side inlets, like on the side, the inlet and outlets on the side. It looks like if you do that, it might be a little easier to mount in the bottom. Again, I went with this style cooler just because it's what I had, and I'm just going to make it work. The point where we're going to splice into the system is right back there, which I know what you're saying, I can't really see it, and you're right, you can't really see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove the tire so I can gain access through here. Now, tire removed, I've got a few push-ins here, right? I'm going to remove those. There's a bolt here. And I'm actually going to remove this plastic piece right here by removing these 2 bolts. They should all be 10s. So let me get to doing that and show you guys what we got to work with. See if I can't not blind you guys. All right, so I'm going to radiator roughly where it's going to go in position. I've run my transmission fluid line where I want it to be, and I'll have to show you guys from the top in a sec what that looks like. Right through here, and so I can kind of see roughly. So that hose, this hose right here, is the one I'm intercepting. So what I've done is kind of roughly ran and given myself a little extra slack and marked on my line using a pencil, and this is where I'm going to cut it. And so I'm going to do the same thing for my second line, and I'm going to show you guys up top where it is that I actually ran both lines. Give you a little bit of reference of where I ran my lines. You can kind of see them down there. There's the top of the cooler. There ran through that piece of plastic. That leads, really tough to see, but it leads down to the bottom driver's side, bumper side, like on the outside of the guard of the on the driver's side, and you can see the cooler there through the grill, kind of, as you can see there. I've run my lines. This is again the driver's side. I've run my lines. I'll fix them up a little bit. The splice point is back there, and so I have my lines hanging there. So now I just need to cut the second one to length, mount the radiator on the front, and this might be a little bit easier to see. You guys are getting like kind of late, so I'll shoot what I can today. Well, that escalated quickly. All right, so how did we get here? So pretty much what happened was I didn't have enough room. I was trying to hurry up and get it done, and I ended up taking the whole front bumper off just to gain access, which honestly, guys, so this is the style radiator, the cooler that I got. I would highly recommend getting one that has long like this, and then the inlet and outlet over here on the sides, and placing it up here somewhere. And it'd be a little bit easier. You might not even have to remove the whole front bumper, just maybe the plastic part. But I've had to remove I removed the bumper. Long story short, I installed it, and then I realized that you have to install these little pads on here as well. So I had to go to the store, buy new little zip tie things, and so on and so forth. To pull the radiator forward a little bit to give you more room, there's these clips that you have to squeeze, and then you pull the condenser out. Just be careful. You do it on both sides. It's gonna give you more room so you can move it a little bit. Just make sure you don't try to rip it out because you don't want to break one of the lines and then having to replace the condenser. So what I'm doing now is I went and purchased the new zip ties. So now I'm gonna set my cooler here. And so whenever you squeeze it, it'll actually hold it snug. Like I said, you probably don't need to do all what I've done. I've done it just because it gives you more room. It's not hard. The plastic bumper is quite, there's a ton of plastic tabs and plastic push-ins that you gotta remove. And then you disconnect your radar from over here. If you have sonar sensors, you'll have the second plug probably. But then I actually removed the reinforcement as well, which you just pull the styrofoam piece off. And then there's 14s, one 14 here, and then two right here, one on each side. And it just gives you a whole lot more room to work with. If you just want to do this and you got the room, go for it. Again, like I said, I probably could have been avoided if I'd have gotten a different style cooler with the outlets going over to the side. So finally, I have the actual cooler installed. So the way I ended up doing it, obviously, I unclipped it from the top. That way it's a little bit more movable, right? Then I actually, using a series of like long needle nose pliers, long snips, and a lot of patience, I ran those through the condenser and then moved them, pulled them up, and I kind of slipped the little clamps on the bottom side, and kind of, that's how I went. It wasn't easy, I'm not gonna lie to you. It was probably kind of more of a pain than it should have been, and I'm sure to some extent it would have been easier just to kind of move the condenser, but I didn't want to risk damaging the lines. So now that I have everything taken apart, I'm actually going to see, I noticed there's some more options as far as running the tubing goes. So that's what I'm going to do now and figure out which way I'm going to route everything. That was a little bit more work than I thought it was going to be. So this is what I ended up doing, right? I have my cooler mounted on the bottom. Again, if you're watching this before you even buy one, I would say buy one, put it up here. The two inlets and outlets up here, right? Or maybe a little bit further down, whatever. You get the idea for them to be that way. What I've done is I've actually, in this plastic piece, I left all the bumper off. It was easy for me to work. I've cut little slots and ran my hoses through there. And as you can see, there's one and there's two. And so I've pulled the little connection. Oh, I got these points from RAV4 World. I'll have to include the link in the bio of the video or in the description of the video. But there are my interception points for my cooler. I've put my hose clamps on. I didn't add any oil just because I'm gonna do the transmission drain and fill anyways. And if you're familiar with that, as far as Toyota goes, you're supposed to drain it, fill it X amount, and then whenever you drain it, fill it X amount. And when you're ready to set the level, there's like a little plastic tube inside, and that's how you know whenever it's full. So there's no dipstick on the outside. It's kind of a procedure you have to do using a scan tool so you can measure the temperature of the transmission. So it's a little bit of a thing. That's what I'm gonna do. If you were just installing the cooler, what I would do is I would get like a plunger and hook one end up to one line and the other end into your fluid and suck fluid through the cooler. That's what I would do. If I was to do it that way. Again, I have to do the flush or the drain and fill, so I won't be doing that. Remove the impact bar, which is the word I couldn't remember earlier. It's going to be this top, this one, and this one. You can leave that one alone. So it's these three on each side and the whole impact bar comes off. I forgot to show this earlier, but the foam piece that goes on the front, like that piece, you literally just pull it off. It just kind of pushed into the little holes, so you just pull out and it comes off. So we got our hoses ran, everything's good to go. So one quick tip, guys, while I'm putting everything back together, which again, this goes just kind of do everything in reverse. Depending on how big of a job you're doing, and of course you never know how big this thing gets, right? I didn't think I was gonna have to take a whole front end of this thing off. But what I like to do is little tricks is whenever I take a bunch of parts off is I keep the bolts that go to the specific part together with that part. Now obviously depending on how much space you have, you might be limited to put them in like little Ziploc bags or something. But I kind of have them all spread out toward my garage with the parts that they go with. Because again, like with the front bumper, that front bumper's got like 1,000,001 clips. I ended up with 2 extra ones until I finally remembered that there's some that are tucked away back here, right? 2 little push-ins. So stuff like that, little tips like that are what you want to kind of do to make sure you don't have a bucket of spare bolts. I've had the transmission cooler on my RAV for about a year now, and I have to say I don't regret installing it. Definitely helps out with transmission temperatures, definitely keeps them a little bit lower. I think I was seeing an average of like 15 degrees, 15 to 18 degrees cooler temperatures is pretty good, I think. Keep in mind, I don't really tow, right? So you're gonna see the most significant difference whenever you tow or if you're off-roading. I don't really tow. I do drive a little bit more on the aggressive side, but it's my daily driver. So, but overall, I'm pretty happy with it. And I would definitely recommend it if you have the time and space to do it. And especially if you're gonna go ahead and do the transmission flush, I would go ahead and install it when you do it at the time. That way you get the correct amount of fluid in there with the cooler in the system. Again, I appreciate you guys watching this video. I know this one's probably on a little bit on the longer side, but if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to ask, and make sure to follow on my Instagram and this YouTube channel. Appreciate it, guys.